Hello. Hi, good afternoon everyone. Magandang hapon po and sawadee ka and bonjour. So I'm trying to speak different languages also. I'd also like to welcome everyone who's joining us online. Thank you Acted and Convergence for inviting us today to speak about this really interesting topic. All right. So this afternoon, we'll be talking about building resilience to climate change, how to support agriculture to mitigate risks. So we have a couple of really great panelists that are joining us today. We have Almudena, who is joining us online from the United Nations OCHA Philippines. We also have Mr. Joey Totanes. So he is from the Provincial Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Office of Camarines Norte. And Mr. Jonas Maridumdum from the Nomura Research Institute Singapore, Manila branch. So later on, I'll be asking them to introduce themselves. But for now, let me give you an overview of the climate change situation that's facing our APAC region and also the Philippines. All right, so with these headlines, this is actually pretty normal to us in the Philippines and in APAC. So climate change is definitely a priority for investors, businesses, governments, and local communities. And it has devastating impacts, not just because we are experiencing the physical disasters, but also it has consequently economic costs, especially after the onset of the typhoon, which we are actually experiencing right now. So last weekend, the Philippines was struck with another big typhoon called Typhoon Carding, and that's also the reason why some of our friends in this humanitarian sector, they're also busy with different typhoon operations. So again, climate change is really something that's very close to my heart as well, because I also came from the social entrepreneurship. So I forgot to introduce myself. I am actually Erica Corte. I am the Director for Climate Change and Sustainability Services for SGV and EY Philippines. So I am a sustainability practitioner. I've had experiences working in FMCG sector, so I've seen how great businesses can be, but also how devastating the impacts of businesses are, how there are a lot of negative externalities businesses are contributing with climate change. And I also started a social enterprise back in 2017, where I worked directly with buffalo or carabao cooperatives. So that's why this subject is really close to my heart, both climate change and agriculture. Okay. Oops. All right. Okay. So recently, this year, the World Risk Index 2022 actually indicated the disaster risk from extreme natural events and negative climate change impacts for the 193 UN countries. So as you can see in this chart, it is actually very telling because 8 out of the top 15 countries have the highest risk disaster worldwide, and this belongs to our APAC region. So how they computed it is basically measuring the extent of the geometric mean of exposure and vulnerability. So exposure in a sense of how vulnerable the populations are or how they are exposed to the impacts of earthquakes, tsunamis, coastal and river floods, cyclones, droughts, and sea level rise, while vulnerability maps the societal domain and is composed of 3 different dimensions. So again, this is quite telling. And that's why we need to actually act now, because climate change is really an urgent problem that we're all facing, especially for these top 8 countries that you see here. So yeah, Philippines is ranking #1 there, right? Then next, I'm going to be talking about the climate change and projected impacts to the Philippines. So according to the latest IPCC report, there will be more vulnerable poor communities in 2100. And when we have a lot of poor people, there will be more vulnerable to climate change as well. So there, a study by the Asian Development Bank, or ADB, projects that there will be a loss of 6% in global domestic product, or GDP, in the Philippines by 2100 if we don't do something about climate risk adaptation and mitigation. But they're saying there's a silver lining to it. If we contribute 0.5% of GDP to the budget to mitigate and do climate adaptation activities, then the losses from 6% will be down to only 4%. But still, it's still a big loss. And then there are also some major rainfall changes and patterns in distribution. The PAG-ASA, which is the Philippine Atmospherical and Astronomical Association in the Philippines, is saying that there will be more and more increase of rainfall in the country. And we are also facing a lot of threats to our natural ecosystems. Water and power scarcity, more intense droughts, higher sea level rise, declining rice yields, and more public health emergencies. So I'll be reading just some facts and figures, not to really scare you, but more to make sure that we know what we're facing, and so that we can really adapt to the impacts of climate change. So yeah. So we're looking at coral losses, because the Philippines is comprised of 7,641 islands. So we're surrounded by bodies of water. We have really good marine biodiversity. But because we are facing coral loss, the IPCC projects that by the year 2051 to 2060, the maximum fish catch potential in our Philippine seas will decrease by as much as 50% compared to 2010 levels. So we are actually experiencing that right now. Some other countries in the region are experiencing that. So that's why we have some conflicts when it comes to marine territories, because people are coming to fish in our seas, in our oceans. So this all links to the impacts of climate change. And then with declining rice yields, the International Rice Research Institute shows that the grain yield will decrease by at least 10% for every 1 degree increase in global temperatures. So again, that is very telling, because we are rice eaters as Asians, and every decrease is actually a decrease in productivity and profitability also for our farmers. So there will also be more intense droughts. It has been estimated that roughly 500,000 farmers have been directly affected by El Nino. And recently, the Philippines were in the headlines globally, because we have the highest sea level rise, which is at 60 centimeters. So we are experiencing 3 times higher sea level rise compared to the global average centimeters, which is at 19. So this puts a lot of risk to our coastal communities, because again, we are an archipelago. So it puts at risk 60% of local government units, covering 61 coastal provinces, 822 coastal municipalities, 25 major coastal cities, and roughly 14 million people that are living in this area would actually need relocation, because once they're underwater, then where will they go? And I'm also going to talk about water scarcity. So the World Resources Institute predicts that the Philippines will also experience a high level of water shortage by 2040. But right now, we are actually experiencing the impacts of this already. For the Filipinos here, I'm sure every time we are at the summer season. We do experience water interruption in our day-to-day lives. So in our household, we are disrupted by this. Also in industries that rely and use water as a resource. So this leads to lower productivity of our labor force as well. And lastly, there will be more public health emergencies because higher temperatures also trigger surges of certain diseases such as dengue, cholera, malaria. And the World Health Organization also shared some reports that every time the temperatures are high in the Philippines, world record diseases are also at the most high in our country. So it's not really to scare you, but it's really more to know that we should really prepare for climate adaptation. So pursuant to the mandate of the Climate Change Act, the Climate Change Commission actually established the results-based monitoring and evaluation system to monitor and evaluate the progress of the implementation of the National Climate Change Action Plan, or NCCAP. So the focus of this is mostly on food security, water sufficiency, ecosystem and environmental stability, human security, climate-smart industries and services, sustainable energy, and knowledge capacity and development. So even though I've presented the impacts to the Philippines, at least our government is also pushing towards our own sustainability, our own adaptation and mitigation when it comes to climate change. So with that, I end my prelude to climate change and impacts to APAC and the Philippines. And I'd like to call on now my panelists. Almoneda is joining us online. Joey and Jonas, please join me on stage here. And I will also let them introduce themselves, what they're doing. So please give us a short introduction. Please also give us please give our panelists a warm welcome. All right, so maybe please sit down. Yeah, we can sit. Yeah, maybe we can start with Joey. You can introduce yourself and what you do and what you represent.
Thank you, Ms. Erica. So good afternoon to everyone. So my name is Joey Totanes from the province of Camarines Norte. I'm working at the local government unit, the provincial local government unit of Camarines Norte. Now I'm working under the Provincial Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Office under Research and Planning Division. So I'm currently the focal person for Research and Planning Division. At the same time, I'm a member of the Bicol Incident Command System Cadre. And now I'm trying to mainstream the DRR and CCA and local development plans and programs in our province. And currently member of the Humanitarian Philippines and under training on Learn to Lead Sustainability. So with Ms. Erica and other members. So that's it.
Thank you for that brief introduction. So Joey wears many hats actually. So he works for the province of Camarines Norte, which is part of Region 5 in the Philippines. So later on, we'll be tackling of our pilot cohort with the Learn to Lead Sustainability program in partnership with Acted as well, 3.0 and Sustainable PH. So next, to introduce himself, I'll call on Jonas.
So hi, my name is Jonas. By day, I am... Hello? Oh, better. Sorry about that. So again, hello. My name is Jonas. By day, I am an industry solutions consultant for Nomura Research Institute, Manila branch. So what we do over there is more of management consulting for companies that want to improve their businesses. And I'm also part of the lead for a recently launched service called the NRI Manila Sustainability Service. So what we're doing there is to help companies improve and update their sustainability journeys, and not just in terms of just CSR or or main sustainability, but also in ESG. Outside my work, I joined Erica in the Learn to Lead Sustainability program, and I'm a member of Sustainable PH, and I also host a podcast with our friend Chantel Nieto from called Sustain Rumble, and I hope that you could have a listen to us on Spotify. And I do some other hats, but those are the main things. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Jonas, for that brief introduction. So again, we do wear a lot of hats, given that we're very, very passionate about this, about, trying to solve climate change and hopefully having a more sustainable future for us and for our future families. So and now I turn over the floor to Almoneda. Hi. Thank you for joining us online. So please introduce yourself as well. We'd love to get to know you more.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Hi, Erika. First of all, thank you so much to Active and Convergence to invite me as a panelist to this forum. I'm so sorry because I would love to be there with all of you, but as Erika mentioned before, we are coordinating the response for the typhoon Noru, so it was very difficult in that moment that all partners are in the field gathering the information. My name is Almudena Montoliu. I'm from Spain, but I've been working here with OCHA for the last year, coordinating the different response, specifically Odette response last December. And I've been working in the international cooperation for the last 12 years in different countries of Latin America and the Caribbean countries, and now here in Asia Pacific. I'm a specialist in DRR, and I also a sphere trainer and member. Yeah, this is a brief summary, and I think that we can move forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Almoneda. So Almu,
Almu is okay.
Almu is actually still working on typhoon operations, so that's why she's joining us from online. And I believe she has a presentation to take us through the different projects of UN or United Nations OCHA Philippines. So Almu, you can take the floor.
Thank you so much, Erika. Well, I think that Erika already talked very good and in detail about what is the situation of the Philippines. So I think that we can move to the next slide. But I would like to highlight that if we are in the first position, it's not only for the different kind of threats that we have. All of us, we already know that the disasters are not natural. So we need to improve our strategy to work in DRR, linking with our actions in the response and early recovery. So it's really important to identify and to have a baseline with the vulnerabilities that are across the country in order to see how we can reduce and mitigate the risk. That's why in 2021, the Philippines was selected as a first pilot at global level to work in anticipatory actions as a new framework in order to reduce the suffering of the people and try to measure if it's better to act before the disaster or continue with the traditional humanitarian action. So that's why under the coordination of OCHA and with our SURF fund, we designed with 5 UN agencies and implementing partners a project to work in anticipatory actions. I'm going to give you an overall overview and then I will let you know what are the milestones of this pilot. First of all, I would like to share the agencies that are involved in this pilot, FAO, IOM, UNFPA, UNICEF, WFP, and OCHA in the overall coordination. We have 7.5 millions USD that will be advanced in case of any any disaster. And well, any disaster, no, specifically typhoons. And we are targeting more than, now the number is higher, but more than 300,000 beneficiaries in Region 5, Region 8, and Region 13. Next slide, please. Why the target beneficiaries is higher now? After the last year with the response, we have a pre-activation as part of the pilot. I will let you know now how is the procedure. But this year, we decided to review the framework and analyze what is the reality of the country and the need to extend the different scenarios to the affected areas under ODET. So that's why we have now 2 scenarios for the pilot in case of the typhoon go to the north or go to the south. We will have the opportunity to play and deploy the teams to the target areas to respond 3 days before the typhoon make landfall. So as you can see in the different scenarios 1 and 2, we have different agencies that are going to be working. The selection was made identifying the level of vulnerability and with different specific criteria, no? Level of vulnerability, level of poverty, the areas that are normally most affected by the typhoons, the capacities of the different local government units, etc. But we have a different consolidated criteria to identify the affected areas. We can go to the next slide, please. Of course, as you see, we have 5 UN agencies. Each agency has implementing partners at local level. So we need a coordination architecture. And for that, we have the humanitarian country team. And as the humanitarian community, we are always working to support the government in the humanitarian response and reduce, mitigate the risk. And that's why our counterpart at national level is the NDRRMC. Then we have the intercluster coordination groups that is similar that the cluster system that the government has, where we have our technical counterpart. And then we have a anticipatory action core group, where we have divided in the process of the pilot. This pilot has 3 main components. The model, that is how we trigger and forecasting the hazard, the implementation that is due by all partners, and then the funding. So we have different technical groups that is working and mainstreaming all the different approaches, such as protection, or PSEA, GBB, across the different implementation activities, and of course a learning group that is monitoring and gathering and collecting all the information. And then we have our counterpart at provincial level, the PDRRMC and MDRRMC. So we work with them in the different regions that are selected. Next slide, please. Okay, you can click several times, please, and you will see the whole slide. But this is the model that we have. It's a model that was agreed at international level. It's some FTEM model that is led by IFRC, the International Federation of Red Cross, and we are working together. So what is the difference between the traditional humanitarian response and the new proposal? Is that instead to wait until the disaster happened, 7 days ago, we're going to start to monitoring the track of the typhoon And if we see that a specific number of households in the target areas will be affected, will be activated. In that moment, we receive the 7.5 USD millions, and we will proceed to deliver this money in the different activities that its agency is working on. So 3 days before the typhoon make landfall, the idea is all the target beneficiaries will be ready to evacuate, but not only to evacuate, to select and identify how they're going to use this money in that moment or after the impact of the typhoon. So with this, we're going to make sure that we can reduce the impact of the typhoon and also promote a better early recovery. And in the case of the agriculture, it's very, very useful for the beneficiaries to have this money in advance in order to put in safe their boats or try to see how they can manage the lands to avoid loss the production. So that is the idea. No? We can move to the next slide, please. Well, very briefly, the activities of the different agencies. We have FAO that I think that for all of you going to be the most interested, that's going to be delivering multi-purpose cash and cash for work. They work with the LGUs at regional, municipal, and LGUs level in order to, in some criteria, identify the target beneficiaries, fisher holds, agricultures, that is the most that are the most affected in the previous typhoons that happened in these regions. So in that case, they will be contact 3 days before, and they already know what they have to do in order to put in safe all their materials and livelihoods. So that is the idea. That is the first milestone of the anticipatory action approach. We don't wait. Well, first of all, we reduce the risk before the disaster happens. But secondly, and most important, we are giving all the tools and all the capacities to the people, and we are not waiting to say the level of vulnerability increase after the disaster, or how we're going to manage, or the people are going to be waiting to see what I'm going to do with my life. They have all the capacities, and they have all the dignity, and they have the possibility to move forward and take decisions of about their life. In the case of IOM, going to be in parallel and similar, and all sometimes in the same barangay, sometimes no. They will be working in multi-purpose cash, but also in strength the shelters and supporting the government in the evacuation centers. In the case of UNICEF, they're going to be mainstreaming the PSEA framework. Well, this is something that the rest of the colleagues also have to do, but they will be working in protection and working with the different schools that can be affected, in wash, nutrition, that are the cluster where they used to work. WFP will also provide multi-purpose cash. And as you see, all of them normally going to be providing cash. The 70% of the 7.5 USD millions will go to multi-purpose cash. So, but the criteria for the beneficiary selection for each agency going to be different because they have different target beneficiaries. It depends of the mandate of the agency and the people that they want to reach. Next slide, please. Well, we have the scenario 2, but it's more or less the same. So the only agency that is here and was not in the scenario 1 is UNFPA. UNFPA is strengthening the communities, specifically the women at community level, and they are doing incredible work to reduce the GBV cases, the PETSEA cases, giving all the capacities to the people, and also providing hotlines, that is the same hotlines that all partners are going to use during the implementation, to make sure that everybody has access to complain, and also to talk about any GBV or PETSEA situation. Next slide. Well, this is in general information that I already mentioned. The 5 UN agencies that are going to be implementing with different local organizations and international NGOs. 70% of the funds going to be multipurpose CAS, and the other 30% will go to non-iPhone items and specific actions. Next slide. Please. To finalize, now that we have the general overview about anticipatory action, just to highlight, it's to act 7 days before and deliver everything 3 days before the typhoon. Also to provide dignity. We have a specific model to track the typhoon. We have a different implementation activities that are going to cover the needs of the people. And then we have the money to act previously to the disaster. But of course, this cannot be happen if we don't have a baseline and if we don't work with the communities for a long time. And this is something that we are also working and we need to strengthen. But we started to work 1 year ago. That's why it's so really important for us, the localization agenda, because we need to make sure that all UN agencies are in coordination with the local organizations, that they already know the communities, they can adapt, depends of the needs, the specific needs that they can have. And that's why at the beginning of the project, we implemented a pre-crisis survey that has different kind of components that different agencies were looking for, and gave us a very good baseline about when the people prefer to receive the money, how they're going to spend the money, basically in their previous experiences. What are the main needs that they have? What are the main issues that they had in previous experiences? So we have a very good report that was already launched a week ago, and provide us with a baseline that was also validated with our experience during the OTEX response, because this was conducted 1 year ago with all implementing partners, leading by a STAR network. But it's true that with the response, we saw that the problem is like we are reproducing the same situation, and the needs of the people across the country are the same. So if we have the information, that is the most important, what we're going to do now with this information to make sure that we can cover and reduce the risk. That is my last slide. Just to summarize, anticipatory action as an approach to reduce suffering, to provide dignity, to link the disaster risk reduction with the humanitarian response, a new modality of humanitarian response, to improve an early recovery. Because if we want to create resilient communities, we need to make sure that they have all the capacities before, and we don't have to wait that something happened, no? And this is part of the sustainability, sorry. The use of gas is a new modality. They have to choose. And all of us, we can be in that situation, no? All of us, we are exposed, and we live in exposed cities, so to any hazard, so the people need to choose what they want to do. And the third message is the localization. We need to make sure that we are working and we support the government, but we are working with the local organizations that are across the country, and they know what is the best for their communities. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Almu. Let's all give her a round of applause. So thank you, Almu, again for a very insightful report on anticipatory action. So again, this is really a good segue to our next panelist. The report also focuses a study on the Bicol region and in the Philippines in terms of industries that contribute to our economic growth, agriculture, fishery and farming, as well as forestry and other industries and services. These are the top industries that are contributing to our economy. So now, let me just go to our next panelist, Joey, as he is from the Bicol region or Region 5. And Bicol is usually one of the hardest hit regions with all these tropical cyclones. So typhoon operations is definitely in their DNA because they're always hit by a lot of cyclones every year. So now, Joey, my question to you is, what are your disaster risk reduction mitigation programs to help lessen the impacts of these typhoons?
So thank you, Ms. Erica. And so muli po, I'm from Camarines Norte. So the report from OCHA, Camarines Norte is the only province that included in the Bicol region, right? So Camarines Norte is very prone to different hazards, especially hydrometeorological hazard, typhoon, storm surge, and possible for tsunami since we are 200 kilometers away from the Philippine Trench. And we have a mountainous area, so we are also prone from landslide or geologic hazard. So we are working in 4 thematic areas in our office, especially in our province. So the first one is the prevention and mitigation, the thematic area on prevention and mitigation. So we have activities on nature-based solutions like tree planting, mangrove planting, nursery for fruit trees and other plants. And we have infrastructure, which is slope protection, river control, farm-to-market roads, and coastal protection, marine reserve protection, and other activities with regards to environmental conservation and protection. And next is the thematic area on the disaster preparedness. This is more on information education campaign down to the local level. So we are aiming to capacitate or empower the community level. Katulad nung sinabi ni Ma'am kanina, the family-based approach. We are trying to train the family in the grassroots level. So we have training on community-based disaster risk reduction management, school-based disaster risk reduction management, response training, and more on highly specialized training in terms of disaster response operations. So the next thematic area is the disaster response. We are trying to capacitate by means of purchasing equipment for disaster response, and to train more rescue teams in case that there is a disaster, so we have more manpower to respond. And at the same time, So the last one is the thematic area for disaster rehabilitation and recovery. Since our province is high risk or prone to different hazard, so every year we experiencing 3 to 5 weather disturbances that affect our province, and so we need to countermeasure or to build back. We try to follow the principle, the build back better principle, especially for those infrastructure project. And nakalimutan ko pala kanina, ma'am. So I'm a registered nurse. So magtataka kayo bakit na involved ako sa farming. So I am graduate of Master of Science Disaster Risk Reduction Management sa Central Bicol State University of Agriculture. But my father is our inspiration in farming since he is almost 5 decades, almost 50 years as farmer, but traditional farmer. So we are trying to learn more of new innovation, new technologies to help them. So because we all know that the farmers or the farming industry or the agricultural sector is one of the lowest income generating sector in the Philippines, unlike to other countries. And siguro that's it. Yun lang muna yung program ng Provincial Disaster Risk Reduction and Management. So later on, i-introduce din namin yung mga DRCCA initiatives ng Office of the Agriculturist. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Joey. So you actually mentioned that, the yields in agriculture, it's one of the lowest when it comes to productivity. When in fact, we, as a country, we have huge potential when it comes to agriculture because we have a lot of land. So in the Bicol region or in Region 5, the largest component of their economy is agriculture. So they have a lot of different crops, produce, just like pili nuts. That's endemic to the Philippines. We have coconuts, abaca, banana, coffee, jackfruit, rice, of course, and corn. But then since 2020, when the pandemic happened, the Bicol region's economy actually started to decline, and it's been declining year on year. So aside from the COVID-19 pandemic, other factors that affected the decline of the economy is also the African swine flu. So because the Bicol region is also very much into agriculture, livestock, farming, and fishery, they were very badly hit, as well as, of course, the typhoons that we've been talking about earlier. They also had fall armyworm infestation, and also with the recent global hike in prices of inputs. So now, given that your province, Joey, is facing so many climate-related risks, do you have programs that support climate adaptation and mitigation when we talk about the agricultural sector?
So I have the list of the RCCR interventions that are facilitated by the Office of the Agriculturist. So I am just read it for you. So first is use of resilient varieties. So we are trying to more to engage or to select varieties that are suitable or suited to the current situation. So before we try to improve or enhance our plans, we conducted climate and disaster risk assessment. So we identify the different hazards that may affect in the locality. So in every municipality, there is different risk or different hazard that may affect, and the level of vulnerability of each municipality. Next is the adjustment of planting calendar. So based on the climate projection or the CLIRAM of the DOST, so we identify those months that are can produce or can madaming ulan, or we are exposed to heavy rain and other hydrometeorological hazards. So we adjusted the calendar, the planting calendar of different varieties of plants and consider the livestock raising. And next is the farm mechanization for farm operation. So we all know that malaking tulong yung paggamit ng mga farm machineries in farm operations to ease yung yung farming, yung methodology on planting, harvesting, and among others. And to put up we have established post-harvesting facility for the plants, and we, in partnership with other organizations, with other NGAs or the other national government agencies, they established the Amaya project or the Amaya village, the adaptation and mitigation initiative for agriculture. So they selected 2 municipality in our province. Hopefully, ma-replicate siya in other municipalities. So they established with automated weather station. So 3 automated weather station in selected or priority areas that are very sensitive, very in susceptibility in different hydrometeorological hazard. So they produce a 10 weather forecast for the farmers to act to mitigate or to lessen the impact of those heavy rains or other meteorological hazard. So they produce seasonal outlook to adjust the planting calendars and to select the good variety of plants. And next is to improve the irrigation facility. So we all know that the water is very kinakailangan, needed in the planting. So we need to improve the irrigation system for us to deliver a good supply of water from the upland going to the lowland wherein the farmers are situated. Next is to establish a marine reserve or fish sanctuary, and nursery for fruit and fruit trees and other plants or other seedlings, and to have a buffer stock seedlings and other farm inputs, especially organic inputs. So we are trying to push for organic inputs rather than traditional or chemical fertilizer or other inputs to help our farmers. And some of the farmers are now encouraged to apply for a crop insurance, so to mitigate their losses just in case they are heavily affected by those hazards. Thank you.
Thank you, Joey. So that was a very comprehensive plan on climate mitigation and adaptation measures for the provincial government of Camarines Norte. So now you've mentioned a couple of different things you want to do. And I'm sure those cost a lot of money. I've been hearing that, you want to improve this, you want to establish this and that. And so now we want to turn the focus to financing. Early this morning, we heard that there's also a financing gap when we talk about climate change and food security. And I believe that it is definitely the same thing when we talk about climate change and in agriculture. So happily or good enough that there are a couple of different development banks also that are helping to push this agenda by providing funding. So the World Bank Group and the Asian Development Bank, they're committed to supporting client countries to invest in and build a low carbon climate resilient future. So helping them to be more prepared and to adapt to current and future climates. So these institutions for World Bank, they agreed to a country partnership framework for the period of 2019 to 2023 here in the Philippines. And they are aiming to support the implementation of government climate change reforms to ensure that the enabling environment is in place at the national, sectoral, and local levels. ADB and the Philippines, on the other hand, had agreed to a country partnership strategy for the period of 2018 to 2023. So ADB will continue their efforts to increase the resilience of vulnerable communities to disasters and climate change risks by linking community-level resilience building measures to wider investments, because they recognize that agriculture and natural resources, as well as urban transportation, development, and energy, are very much vulnerable to climate change and the disasters. So just this year, ADB actually approved a $250 million policy-based loan to support the Philippines in its climate change adaptation and mitigation efforts. So the program targets reforms in policies that will help the country and the government to build, plan, finance, and institutionalize systems to scale up climate action. It will enhance the resilience of farmers and fishing communities to the increasing impacts of climate change, and also reduce the greenhouse gas emissions so that the country can actually comply with its nationally determined contributions to the Paris Agreement. So this program was actually prepared jointly also with the Agence Française de Développement, which is providing co-financing of around $172 million to the government. So there are funding that is coming to the country, to Southeast Asia, for us to really look at mitigating and adapting to climate change. So now I actually want to turn the floor to Jonas, because you've mentioned to me that you conducted a study on integrating green, inclusive, and climate smart finance in microfinance institutions in the Philippines. So maybe you can tell us more about this study, because it's a really good bridge between, climate change, agriculture, and finance.
Yeah, thank you, Erica, for your question. Let's first define two things before I continue with what we discovered in the study that I was part of. First of all, when you talk about sustainable finance, it's governed here in the Philippines by two frameworks. The Sustainable Finance Framework from the Central Bank, or the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, which sets out the guidelines basically on how banks should really form themselves in assessing environmental and social risks. So this is more of a corporate thing, but it covers all factors, including agriculture. And with that, they also developed, in coordination with several government agencies, including the National Finance Department, and other agencies that are involved actually in things such as agriculture, climate resilience, and so on, to develop a sustainable finance roadmap, where eventually all grants, loans, whatever financial instruments that either the banks or the insurance agents or microfinance, in the case of my study at that time, they would be guided by a set of steps, basically on what they want to accomplish. So with that in mind, when we talk about renewable energy, we also have to think about three major things. First is your traditional renewable energy sources: solar, wind, hydro, small scale and dam, etc. There's also the idea that you have to include organic agriculture, meaning you're creating your own fertilizer, for one, organic fertilizer. Because according to studies that were made by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, organic fertilizer is still a renewable energy source. Of course, because you're trying to put in nutrients into the ground. And there are certain studies that prove that you can actually quantify that. And they, as much as possible, we really want to focus on regenerative or renewable systems. Therefore, you really want to consider or integrate that idea of organic fertilizer as part of a renewable energy source. So what happened to the study? So there's a microfinance institution here in the Philippines that really wanted to explore, as part of their sustainable finance initiative,
Hi, Erica. Excuse me, we can't hear you. It's on mute
Okay, apparently. Okay.
now.
So anyway, my part of the study again was really to focus on what are the energy requirements of the farmers and what alternatives could be offered. And how can microfinance kind of bridge that gap between the needs and how can they finance it, or how can they put the money in it. And what we first discovered is a trend is that farmers are really willing to go into this idea. But the problem is the parameters for energy use assessments, as standardized as they are, they don't know how to really do it. So the first step, or the first thing that perhaps anyone who wants to do or wants to venture in this field, financing agricultural projects, is to really talk to the farmers and ask them, okay, how much do you really use, or how much gasoline or diesel do you really use? How much kilowatt hour of electricity do you really use? But you have to do it in a way that they would understand. Second, the trend is that they want to go 100% solar. But in places where it's more mountainous, such as in Benguet, you can't really put solar panels in a valley, right? So they're not really familiar with other alternatives, such as putting it in wind or putting it in a system that's more of a microgrid hybrid, or solar microgrid wind. But they really want to do that. So another thing that that microfinance institutions or financial institutions really need to consider is geography and the physical characteristics of the area. And lastly, what we discovered is that farmers really want more of assistance when it comes to getting water into their farms or in their livestock areas. And if you look at the case of Central Luzon, that gets more drought now, more recently compared to before, and they're now swept with heavy rains because of the typhoon. Sometimes the irrigation systems may not be enough, or they might not be able to reach certain farmers. So if you really want to consider renewable energy in agriculture, you may also want to consider really placing mini grids and microgrids and teach these farmers how they operate, how they can utilize it from a central location and not have it like on a per farm basis, because it might be very, very expensive for them. And also introduce payment terms that they can really afford. Because, of course, I guess Joey would attest to this, some farmers are traditional farmers, and they might not be earning enough compared to your industrial scale farmers or more commercial farmers. So the demand and the want is there. The question is, how do you get it to them? And I guess I'll leave it at that for now, right?
Thank you so much, Jonas. So thank you for giving us a picture on the links between microfinance, renewable energy, and also, of course, farmers' readiness to adapt all these technologies and innovation. So as much as we want to push forward sustainable agriculture, there is actually a lot more work to be done. And it really needs a lot of cooperation between each sector, whether you're in finance, you're in the private sector, you're in the civil service organizations, also, of course, from the government when it comes to policies. And so with that, I'd actually like to ask, to go back to Joey and ask him, what help do you think you need in the province of Camarines Norte when we want to push forward the climate mitigation and adaptation, especially in agriculture?
Okay, first is we address the communication. So we have a very good plan from national down to the region to the province. But ito bang mga planong ito, are those plans are doable at the local level? They naintindihan ba ng mga farmers, ng mga nasa grassroots level, yung mga plano na ini-introduce natin?
So can the farmers at the can the national level actually understand the
Vice versa.
the needs of the farmers? Yes, thank you for helping me there. Yeah, and so this is actually quite important.
Yeah. Next is when it comes to additional resources or funding from other agencies or national government or NGOs. So one priority activities we need to engage is the climate smart agriculture technology or the new innovations for our farmers. So we need to help the integration of renewable energy like solar, hydro, wind energy, and the provision of alternative livelihood for those farmers who are situated in high-risk areas, so that they have alternate source of income. And next is sustainable farming techniques and provision of advanced equipment. So additional farm machineries. Next is the additional climate resilient technology and natural-based solution measures. So we need to protect our ecosystem. So we need to preserve our watershed. We need to protect the our community from the ridge to reap. So from the mountain going to the coastal communities. Next is to conduct capacity building in the grassroots level. So we need to capacitate our community. We need to provide trainings on climate smart agriculture, organic agriculture, urban agriculture, and other initiative that improve their knowledge and skills in terms of farming. And providing hazard resilient seedlings or variety, so that we mitigate the losses in times of disaster or calamity when they badly hit. Thank you.
Thank you, Joey. Now I'd also like to ask a question to Almu. Hi, Almu. So now that you've heard some of the asks of Joey from the provincial government, I'd also like to ask you if you have any asks that would also help OCHA, UN OCHA, with how you respond or how you help get to your mission, especially on adaptation measures.
Well, thanks. It was very interesting presentation. Maybe I can, in your first presentation when you, Erica, was talking, and you indicate the different topics that are as part of the climate change plans. It's like the same needs that the people have when we have a disaster. No, so everything's linking, and that's why, for example, for us, working anticipatory action is an opportunity to link with the work that all actors are doing on in the field level. So, of course, I took note of all the elements that was highlighted. I think the communication, first of all, we need to decentralize the information. We need to adapt to the realities of each region and each municipality. It's not the same. We are talking a country with very different way to face the reality, with different cultures. So it's really important to adapt, no, all the plans. And this is something that happened at global level, no. We have centralized countries that produce a template, and they try that the country, the rest of the countries replies that template, and it's not possible. So it's something that we are doing in parallel in our work. And that is why we are working the localization agenda, to make sure that we work with the local level, we work with the government at local level to better understand what are the needs. It was really impressive and really important. I will be in contact with the college to contact him with the FAO, because sometimes it's difficult to have the list with all the a clear list with all the elements that we need to work on. And what happened in the humanitarian aspect, sometimes we arrive after the disaster and we try to organize the house, support to organize the house. But if you have someone that is leading, and for this it's really important to have someone from the government, that they coordinate the process and is clear about what the people in this area, in her or his area needs, we can move forward very quickly. So it's great that you identify all the elements about innovation. This is another element that we can work on, and I'm sure my colleagues from FAO and any other agencies can be involved to support the initiative. Alternative livelihood, something very interesting we saw with Odette when we went and we worked with different affected areas. One of the things that everyone noted, the affected beneficiaries, was like, give me an alternative. It's like, I cannot continue every year facing the different typhoons and losing everything. So there is any other way to continue have another kind of livelihood, but we need to think with all of them. We need to involve the participation of everybody, in the discussion, because they have to choose what kind of livelihood they want. We can provide it with a real information about what are the alternatives and options that they have. They sit in the kind of lands, the economy of its region. But it's true that we need to listen to them. Sustainability, well, everything is part, I think that is really important. We are all of us here to create a sustainable society. Maybe we need to start to think if the socioeconomic model that we have is valid or not. Because when we see the impact of the climate change and the need to adapt ourselves, we can also have to think that what is our balance with the ecosystem, as human beings, what we want, So yeah, ecosystem-based adaptation. I have many years working with different governments. Like, please, we need to invest in green infrastructure instead gray infrastructure, So yeah, and one of my learnings was that sometimes at local level there is not enough budget, but after an exercise with one country, we discovered that sometimes it's the way that we present the projects. That if you change how you are presenting the project, for example, I need to build a road and it's too expensive. So regional or national level going to tell you that, sorry, there is not budget. But if you say, is the only evacuation road that we have, or I need to preserve this ecosystem because at the same time, all the people, the village that is behind these mangroves, for example, going to be safe until the occurrence of any typhoon is another way. So we need to start to link the people that work in planning with the people that work in DRI, and with the theory and the practical learnings work together to change the approach that we present our projects, because I think that we can find a way not to solve the lack of budget. So there are many opportunities to work on this, and thank you for all the learnings provided for us, because it's really important to have this different point of view. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Almu. So actually, she said it. This is the beauty of 3-0, the alliance, where all the different actors are coming together. We're discussing issues that we really care about, and hopefully have more collaborations, more communication. Because at the end of the day, it is us humans that will be able to change and reverse, hopefully, the impacts of climate change. Maybe we do we have some time for some questions? Yeah. Do we have some questions here on site or maybe online that are addressed to our panelists? Are there any questions? All right. So yes. From Dadan Ramdan, give us descriptions. What policies have been issued at various levels to support community efforts to mitigate climate change risks in the agricultural sector? So who would like to respond to this? Joey? Yeah.
Ma'am. So, balikan natin, no, yung inintroduce ng national with regards to climate and disaster risk assessment. So, supposedly all the plans from barangay, municipal, and the province should be risk-informed. So, we need to determine the different risks per sectors. So, we need, based on the risk, based on identified hazard, so what are the actions to be taken? So from that, the community level is the one who identify the measures that can suitable or adaptable or doable in their community based on the existing resources, based on the existing budget. So we need to assess first. We need to determine what are the hazards, what are the vulnerabilities, what are the adaptive capacities, and what are the possible solutions or intervention that we are going to do to address the issues on adaptation and mitigation when it comes to climate change. Thank you.
Thank you, Joey. So it's like a grassroots approach. So you start with the community. What exactly do they need? Because again, different communities have different needs. They either are in the mountainous regions or in the coastal communities. So it has to start from the grassroots as a starting point. So we do rely on the ground assessments. Jonas, you want to share something?
Yeah. Well, what Joey described actually are parts of two national policies. The National Climate Change Action Plan, which sets out the main umbrella of policies that government wants to pursue in response actually to two measures. First, we do have a Climate Change Act here in the Philippines. Second is our obligations or commitments to the Paris Climate Agreement. With climate smart agriculture is actually part of the Climate Change Action Plan. And it also mandates, with that plan and with another framework called the National Climate Change, NFSCC. I forgot the full title, the National Strategy, something for Climate Change. But it mandates all local government units, including Joey's, to create their own local climate change action plans or LCCAPs. And it's supposed to be for public consumption. So you can actually ask your city or municipality if they have already a plan in place. And that's supposed to be for what, 10 years? 10 years. Yeah, that includes climate change expenditure tagging. What are the priorities? What are the risks? What are the opportunities that they may have? And what are the sectors that are involved? Because they also need to identify who the stakeholders are. So hopefully, I don't know in Camarines Norte, but I hope the provincial government has it for public consumption. But for those who are interested to know what your local government has in mind for climate change adaptation mitigation, you can ask them. So yeah.
All the plans are uploaded in Climate Change Commission website. all the local climate change action plan that are approved by the local government units.
So have it.
Thank you very much. Yes, we have another question here. Hi, Olivier, and then after, ma'am.
Thank you. So Olivier from Gawat Kalinga, Europe. Two questions. The first one is, do you have some kind of innovation scouting to look at what's going on in the world for innovations in the way to mitigate the climate change? And second question, more specifically for water usage in agriculture, do you push farmers to use more the goutte-à-goutte and technologies like the one developed by Aqualone that we had at the GK Enchanted Farm, where we add a bit of technology, but it's kind of low-tech, low-cost technology. So the water comes only at the best time. The plants need the water, and the water is just going there. Goutte-à-goutte, I don't know the word in English, but see what I mean? Goutte-à-goutte is
Little by little.
yes,
Drop by drop.
Droplet by
Okay,
drop.
drop by drop.
Thanks.
Okay. Well, I'll probably describe it from an industry / national government perspective, and perhaps Joey could share his experience in the provincial and local levels. So what's in the plan, or the National Climate Change Action Plan, is that technological innovation should be included as part of climate change adaptation and mitigation. So much so, actually, in the case of water. Because although reports that are coming from various sources, including IPCC, does not yet tag Philippines as part of severe risk, but it's going to be. Considering that we're having increased series of droughts or periods of droughts, but when the rains come in, it pours quite heavily. So how do you respond to that? It depends on what the local government is looking at, or what are the main risks. So there are players already in the field that want to support this kind of measure, technological innovations. And one of them actually is the use of solar-powered pumps in parts of Southern Luzon and Central Luzon. There are projects already in place by the Department of Agriculture for these projects. However, I understand that something that what's in the GK Enchanted Farm is not yet in the mainstream. It should be, personally. And it's also encouraged, because eventually we're going to have to find ways to stock up what's on the heavens for times when it doesn't rain anymore. So, but thank you for that question. Joey, perhaps you could share more about it.
In addition, so in Camarines Norte, we are protecting and preserving the watershed, because the watershed is the one who hold the large bodies of water that are capable to use domestically and for consumption as a potable water. Next, in the household level, so some of the residents are using the rain water harvesting facility. So, and some of the farmers, the urban farmers, are using the hydroponics and aquaponics to produce vegetable on their own at their backyard or in a household level. So that is the only or some innovations that I can share it to you for now. But we are requesting for more innovations, new technologies to be introduced in our provinces, in our province, in the municipalities that the community can adopt. Thank you.
Almu, do you have something to share with us?
Well, I think that this is more specific, so I think that my colleagues already completed. But for our side, how introduce the innovation is one of the elements. I think that we need to open the doors and to link the discussion with the resources partners. in order to see how all these initiatives that are thinking and implemented at local level, we can connect with the different donors that are available to support the development in the country. Well.
Thank you very much. So I believe we have another question here in the audience.
And before about the solar panel for the agriculture, uh, do you have the insight or from the research you have whether the solar panel for sorry because I was late. I hope this is what you mentioned before about your research on this the use of solar panel. So do you have the information or the insight like if the farmer organization use this solar panel, like how many years that it can be profitable for them? Because if this is the solution for the in terms of energy, so maybe something that the government also need to look at. Because in Indonesia itself, solar panel itself is still so expensive. So I made my for my house, I made the calculation like if we convert to the solar panel, it took us like 20 years to pay back. So I wonder how it will if we do that for the farmer organization for if they convert the process using the solar panel that you mentioned before. I hope that's related to what you mentioned before.
Okay. First of all, dari Indonesia ya. Terima kasih. Okay. In terms of solar panels, although we didn't focus on the households, what we focused was on the farms, because the sizing of the solar panels and farms is actually quite less compared to your average household. So if you're talking about a household that has like lights, your basic appliances, your air conditioning, and perhaps like a lots of gadgets, that's going to be quite expensive. I did my sizing myself because I used to work in the solar energy industry. For my home alone, based on my needed requirements, I would actually need 1,500,000 pesos. So that's about in dollar terms, what, $20,000-$30,000. But you have to stretch it to like for 30 years, because the lifespan of a solar panel, industry-wise, it has to be around 20 to 30 years. After 30 years, efficiency drops significantly, but you can still use it. For the case of agriculture, because the demand is quite low, it's only limited to the operations of your farm. What are your usual like requirements for a farm? It's usually for solar pumps, usually for the lights, especially for livestock. And if you need to charge up any device that you need, for example, like a hand tractor or something as big as as a big tractor, it's not as demanding compared to the one that you have at home. Therefore, the solution that I was proposing at the time in the study is to not have a single home or a single farm have all the solar panel needed. You can have it in a community-based solar setup, like mini grids. And in the Philippines, there are mini grids that are being constructed in places where the national grid cannot reach them. And it's one solution for rural communities that can be affordable. And I understand that homes in rural communities don't require much electricity compared to us here in the cities. So it would be one way for them to get light, and be more accessible to modern conveniences. And it would be a big help for them as well if you want to invest in solar panels in that manner. But of course, you also have to think about not going 100% solar. There are industry studies that show that if you want to go full solar, it may not be enough for the community. So you need to diversify. you need to think about solar wind, solar battery, wind battery, small scale hydro. It depends on the location, depends on what the needs are, what's the demand, what can be the supply. But you can just think about the technological imagination that's out there. So Joey?
I also thank you for responding to that question, Jonas. Also, I like to believe that when we look at solar energy, for example, right now we're actually in the middle also of the oil and energy crisis. So given the high costs of diesel, gasoline in the market, I believe that the investment time to recover solar energy would actually drastically decrease as well. A lot of our agricultural farmers, they use a lot of diesel in their practices. So if we do get to harness the power of solar or other forms of renewable energy, then this will help them with their productivity, with their overall profitability towards a more sustainable agriculture system. Yeah.
In addition, so in our province, our governor is try to invest in solar and wind energy, especially for those areas that are situated or located in the coastal areas and island communities. That the only possible source of energy is by renewable energy, the solar and the wind, or if the waves of the sea can generate power. Okay.
Okay. All right. So I think we have one more question I saw earlier from online. Maybe we can flash it. From Jazz De Leon. For Sir Joey, considering the amount of workload at the grassroots level, would you say the manpower for implementation is enough for LGUs, or what is further requested?
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Jazz. So in our province, in the Camarines Norte, so we conducted a multi-stakeholder mapping for those organizations, associations, national government agencies, the community level. So we're trying where is the possible areas that we can work together. So we all know that as you see in the slide, so the workload, the amount of work at the grassroots level is very high. So we need the support from multi-stakeholder, especially our partners. So we organize Perma-Hub, the Permaculture Hub, wherein there is a lot of members from different organizations, from different associations that are advocating best agricultural practices that will help the environment at the same time, and group of environmentalists that will protect our ecosystem. So we need the support of everybody to really mitigate or adapt to climate change. So we didn't want that the community level is the one to shoulder all the burden. So we need to share. Everybody need to share. So share from the government agencies, non-government agencies. So we need to explore all the possibilities, all the resources that can give at the grassroots level to help them in the daily activities or daily lives. Thank you.
Can I just do a follow-up to Jass's question here? Sir, how about civil society organizations? How do you engage with them?
Yeah. We are very happy that the local government unit is encouraging all the civil society organizations to get involved, to be part of the system, to be part of the activities at the grassroots level. So all the civil society organizations are very much welcome, to work with us in the local government unit to help the community level.
Thank you very much, Joey, Jonas, Jazz, for your question. maybe I'd like to just ask one last word from Almu. To if you have anything to add or share, not about the question, but more about the topic in general, so that we can also move on. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have anything in mind, but maybe the importance to understand the work that each of us is doing, I think is relevant. The different experiences that you shared this afternoon are very useful for us, because even when you are working in the development is everything, no? When we work in emergency, is part of the development. Also to try to advise, no, the need that all the plans add a specific or have different scenarios in case of an emergency, no? It's really important. Sometimes we are implementing projects and we are not keeping in mind the different risks that we can have in the development. Taking into account the reality of this country is something that happens every year. So if we want to maintain, you know, the projects in a sustainable way, we need to add emergency plans with different scenarios. And of course, all of this needs to be done now. We don't have to wait that nothing happens. So this is really important. The preparedness, the response now with anticipatory action, and the early recovery is something that we can plan before any critical situation. Thanks again. I think that we need to continue working all of us together. This is the only way. Even when we have a lack of fund, it's really important that we don't work in silos, that we work together, because we have a deadline. The problem is like the deadline is very close. So we need to engage the people to understand what is the real impact of the climate change and how going to change their life and how it's changing their life, because we are seeing the effects, no? So it was a really pleasure to share the panel with all of you. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Thank you very much, Almu. So to close or to recap what happened this session. So basically, we've shared with you the climate change impacts in APAC, in the APAC region, in the Philippines, kind of gave you a doom and gloom situation. But then again, if we do act now, we do act towards climate adaptation and mitigation, and also, importantly, work together and not in silos, then I think there is much hope for humanity and for the sustainability of the entire planet. So thank you very much, and hope you had a good session with us. Again, we'd like to thank our wonderful panelists. So we have Almu, Jonas, and Joey. So please give them a round of applause. Thank you. And have a good afternoon, everyone.